All right, real quick, just because I restarted the recording, we're just going to go over what's in workflow 2.15. See if anybody has any user stories to report, and just open it up for questions. So, without any further ado, let me post the URL. People are probably well aware of this, but in case people are watching the recording afterward, there's the release notes. We got workflow 2.15 done last week, and just kind of announced it today because there were a couple little details to be sorted out. One thing you hopefully don't care about too much, but you might notice is we seem to have broke the signing of the charts. So if you were actually doing Helm -- verify, that's not currently working until we get it fixed up again. The charts have been signed the same way. It's just there's a bit of a disconnect now that we had to move the repository off S3. So apologies for that. We'll probably fix it up in the next week. And if that was something you were relying on, just don't use the verify flag for right now. As you can see, if you as you can see from the release notes, basically mostly what went in this release is thanks to Maxime here. We have RBAC support. If you're just upgrading, if you already have a cluster working, then you're probably not using RBAC because you would have run into issues, and it won't turn it on. So just go ahead and upgrade. If you are using a new cluster, doing a new install, that's right, lots of hearts for Maxime. If you're doing a new install, you probably want to turn on the default in general these days with Kubernetes 1.6 and later is to have some kind of RBAC on a lot of providers. So you may need to turn this flag on just to get things working. And really that's the overall story of the release. There's some other bug fixes. You probably also noticed at some point recently we switched the licensing for every little bit, and you were probably asked to agree to that. So everything's under MIT license now, simply because Microsoft's lawyers are much happier with that. Beyond that, it's kind of an uneventful release, but if you need RBAC, you're happy about that. Maxime, do you have anything you want to share about the implementation, how it went? Thanks for being so patient with us while we very slowly checked it out and tested it.
Thank you. The hardest part was reading all the sources of controller and router for for extracting all the actions. I begin with just plain install with RBAC enabled on the IP server, and just reading for audit log. After a couple of hours, I have draft implementation in single file. So after a day, I propose first pull requests with RBAC enabled. Thank you for all who tests all of this crap. Unfortunately, audit log was not maybe I just try not all of the possibilities in my testing. So when Matt and Deis don't know how to
Vaughn's on vacation right now. He deserves it.
Good to him. After their comments, I was reading the sources. It was the easier plan. So I hope it works now. I already upgraded 2 of my free clusters to new release, and they seem to work.
That's what we're shooting for. Seems to work. Yeah,
Yes.
And like Maxime said, I mean, let us know right away if you run any issues. We do as much platform testing as we can, but Kubernetes is still a wild world of configurations and variations. So we tested it everywhere we could find, and I think it's pretty solid. But if you do run any issues, we will pounce on them and fix them. So let us know.
By the way, I believe the next step is in RBAC implementation is namespacing. I mean, for now, Deis controller's role is global. It's cluster role. So for now, Deis controller easily can destroy any namespace, absolutely any namespace, and it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
So I think we should create one huge cluster role like now for controller, but we should not create cluster role binding for it. In any application namespace, we should create usual role, not cluster role, or binding. Role binding, not cluster role binding. And this binding in namespace should be bind cluster role. It's possible in Kubernetes, it works. And I believe any application namespace should contain role binding for controller. So controller will have possibility to destroy only its own namespaces.
Yeah, that would make sense in the sense that we would want to scope it to whenever you create an application, exactly, you don't want to delete, like say Cube System, or you create an application in Cube System and delete it, and then suddenly, where did Cube System go? So, yeah,
exactly.
I totally agree with that.
Unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately, I'm not a Python programmer, so it's hard to me to help with this. I believe it should be done in controller itself.
Yeah, we've had a lot of past contributors who've had a lot of troubles. They've had ease with like contributing to the logger. They've had ease with contributing to everything else. The hardest part has always been the controller because it's a completely different language than everything else. So I totally agree. A long time ago, we could have rewritten the controller and go, but we didn't go with that, and we're seeing that problem today. So. Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a pretty high bar to do what Maxime did, which is basically get your arms around the entire set of components and then make changes in the appropriate places. It's a big code base now, and it's not all the same language.
Yeah. Actually, about namespace deletion, in my old clusters, in releases 2.30 and 2.14, sometimes when I scale pods or just roll and upgrade, it scales too. Namespaces, application namespace which scaling was destroyed. I can't debug it for now, so, and I don't know which I can attach to issue. So for now, I just say it to you.
Yeah, it's not reproducible enough to put in GitHub yet. Yeah. Okay, well, if you get a handle on it, obviously, having it in a GitHub would be great to focus on, because that sounds bad.
Okay.
Do you, for that issue, do you happen to have audit logs that show the delete requests coming in?
Yes, yes. In audit log, I see that namespace was destroyed by controller.
Okay. It might be useful to start open the issue, even though we can't reliably reproduce it, with those logs, just to kind of have a handle on it.
I don't know actually about changes in controller in last two releases, so I will take a break for testing 2.15 in production, and if it will reproduce, I will fire an issue, of course.
Excellent. Any other questions about what's in the 2.15 release or the RBAC stuff or anything we just talked about? So then really at this point, we just wanted to open up for questions and feedback, or if anybody has, here's how we're using Deis workflow, or we would love to use Deis workflow if it only did this, stuff like that. If anybody wants to take the floor for a bit, here's the time. Or if everybody's just watching the Comey testimony in another window, then I don't blame you.
I've got other cards here. We use pants to fill the time. Pants. Yes.
Are there any more general questions about workflow?
Actually, yes.
Sure.
Sorry to bothering you all, but I have a question about Ingress. For now, Ingress realized just by recommendation to install traffic as a default controller, and that's all. All Ingress resources creates without Ingress class, so it's global. And I think it's pretty bad, actually. If we has already an Ingress controller in the cluster, traffic will break it because it not uses Ingress class. And every Deis created Ingress resource will be forgot the word, sorry. Will be captured by any Ingress controller in the cluster. So, at first, I prefer to attach annotation with Ingress class to any new Ingress resource. Let me provide the link. Here it is. So, as it say, here is another link.
So the essentially the Ingress class, what you're meaning is, what you're saying is we should define an Ingress class on the Ingress resources, depending on, for the experimental Ingress resource feature. So say like if we document and say that Traffic or Nginx is the one that we want to recommend for users, then we should be setting the appropriate class, at least in the experimental native Ingress. That's what you're saying?
Yes, I think we should attach an Ingress class like Deis or workflow or whatever to any resource, and if we still recommend users to install Traffic, we should configure this Traffic for proper Ingress class, because users which install Deis may have their own Ingress controllers, and it will be a mess. I already faced with it. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. If you're running a cluster that has multiple Ingress controllers on it, then this will definitely be breaking for you. There's someone else who reported this exact same issue to Draft, which is a new project that I'm working on around in Helm. So yeah, I could see the context behind this whole issue and what you're seeing too. So perhaps I could take a look at an issue and take a look into it as well.
And the next point about it, traffic has no ability to proxy raw TCP or UDP instead of Nginx, for example. So if we use CNI, container network, I mean, we should something like registry proxy to proxy our ports for builder, for example, which is 22222. For now, I have two options. Or the first option is to install hproxy or Nginx on the host and forward SSH port for builder to builder servers. And second option is to install Nginx Ingress controller. I mean default Nginx Ingress controller from Kubernetes, and use TCP ports config map for it. So,
I may also want to suggest that there's also a third option. This is like a breaking change to how the builder protocol works. But a lot of people don't know is that Git, when you do a Git push, you can do it between two different protocols. You can do it through SSH, or you can do it through HTTP. And there's a HTTPS smart protocol that does a whole bunch of authentication, authorization on there. But I've kind of tossed around the idea around how we could also make it in this kind of in this Ingress world where there's no TCP support, it's just HTTP support. I wonder if perhaps if we could make in the future, like even propose a builder that runs the Git protocol over HTTP, and then that way we could have an Ingress resource for the builder, so we don't have to do the CNI kind of work around the whole thing. We can just route this back through the Deis router again, and we don't have to have two load balancers around the cluster when you enable experimental Ingress. So there's a third option. That one is just not so backwards compatible.
Okay.
Yeah, that just seemed like the quickest option to allow it through was add a load balancer, since we couldn't get it through Ingress. And since it's an experimental feature at that point. But yeah, it was pointed out some people aren't going to be happy about paying for another load balancer as well, things like that. Not just that it's difficult to hook it up with CNI, but that's expensive to some people. It's not ideal.
Yeah, anywhere we can cut costs in that sense for a cluster is better for everyone.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, technically, since this is all experimental anyways, one thing, if we were to eventually get back into this and to do more feature development again, since it's already experimental, we could add a feature flag to builder to turn on the Git protocol to onto HTTPS when you're installing using experimental native Ingress. And then we can have the templates figure out, okay, you're installing an experimental feature, so we'll just turn the builder flag onto HTTPS and install this Ingress resource for you. So there is a way we could do it for this one specific like experimental feature flag. I think it's just a matter of getting those resources and doing that thing again if we wanted to do that. My time is kind of booked up right now with draft and getting up the 700 stars, something crazy that's on it right now.
Yeah, thank you. It has sense. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, as Matt Fisher is pointing out, we're all stretched really thin, as I'm sure you can tell. But so the main goal here should be to get what you were just describing, Maxime, make sure we have that in a GitHub issue so that we can attend to it when time permits. And yeah, and apologies for leaving the experimental Ingress stuff in kind of a half-finished state. At least we have the, it is experimental, but we do know of several big holes in it and all that. And then you're describing some other issues we hadn't even actually thought of. So as long as we have them all documented, then we can work on them.
Actually, I think the best choice will be to create new component like Deis Ingress controller, which will be
well, we were hoping to work with just any arbitrary Ingress controller. That obviously shows we're a little naive because they don't really all work the same way. But the goal was to just drop in with the most popular ones, and I'm not sure that's even that straightforward. So then we try and be opinionated and say, you should install traffic, but effectively that means we get to own your cluster because we're being very opinionated about how you should set up Ingress.
okay. Got it.
Do we have any other workflow questions? Fisher, you want to talk about draft for 60 seconds, just so people, or does everybody already know what it is? Go ahead.
Here.
I'm blowing up right now, so it's
I'll
okay.
just give a 60 seconds pitch. So for the reasons why I haven't personally been in dropping into Deis and doing a lot of stuff, one of the things Deis itself heavily relies on Helm for doing all the installation stuff. And one of the problems that we had working with Deis, not only just Deis itself, but for people in the Helm community in general, was the idea of hacking on a chart and deploying it into the cluster and figuring out if I make this change to my application, what's it going to look like in a Kubernetes cluster? And so that's where draft comes from, or that's where draft comes in. Draft is essentially a tool that works a little bit like Deis's builder in the sense that it basically, you get the application source code, you do a draft create, it will bootstrap the application based on a Heroku Buildpack style. It will give you a Docker file. It will give you a chart for basic bootstrapping to get you up and running. And then from that point on, all your your application source code is all in your root repository. So you can just do a draft up instead of a git push JS master, and it will build a Docker image for you in the cloud, and then it'll push it up to a registry, and then tell Kubernetes with the Helm chart to install this Helm chart or upgrade it. So it's that workflow. It's kind of parallel to Deis's git push workflow in the same sense. However, it's more geared towards people who are hacking on Helm charts specifically and deploying it in the cloud. It doesn't have a lot of the management tools that Deis provides, like Deis domains, cert management, all the other good stuff like logging and monitoring and that thing. It's just literally the deployment part of it. So that's what I've been working on, and apparently after it's been open source, it's now exploding at 843 stars in the last week. So yay.
So in some sense, it's kind of an alternative to using Deis workflow, but it's really scoped just for the development experience. Once you get in production, we don't, I think, want you using draft. You want to take the Helm charts it got you and start using those to deploy. So
yeah, exactly. The deployment model is about the same, but the use case between the two of them differ in the sense that Deis is not a fully managed platform, but the platform itself will fully manage the application, whereas draft is just literally the deployment. And then anything after that is you have to manage the Kubernetes manifest using Helm or using Kubernetes or kubectl directly, or you're using an Ingress controller and you've got your own monitoring stack over here. It's just the deployment part. So yeah, not too much hand-holding.
Well, thanks for indulging us, everybody. I like to plug draft as well. Cool. Anything else we want to talk about? Another question. Oh, right, yeah. Fisher attempted to upgrade us to Cedar 16. Isn't that the new one? And we just ran into some hopefully trivial problems. We need to revisit that at some point soon because, yeah, that is a better, more supportable one. Yeah, Heroku 16. There's a PR out there if anybody has time to take a look at it and figure out what we did wrong. Otherwise, we'll try and attend to it soon.
I think the problem is that the Heroku 16 stack, or the Heroku 14 stack, had a binary that was available in there that the Heroku 16 stack does not. And that's what's causing the current CI issues in there. So I would have to circle back and figure out, okay, where in the builder do we use and rely on this tool or on this specific binary and see if we can work around that or replace it with something else.
Yeah.
The environments are not one-to-one.
So Maxime, are you looking for a way to specify the build packs when you install to customize it, or are you talking about the default one?
I easily can customize any build pack itself, but I have no any way to modify base image to upgrade it or something else. It's confusing sometimes.
I mean, you could build your own slug runner, slug builder, and put them in the values.yaml and then upgrade with Helm to get builder to start using those. But then by the time you've done that, you've implemented this PR here. So thanks very much. So it is possible and hopefully not too undocumented, but yeah, it's a lot of work.
Okay, thank you. I will check it.
Okay, well, unless someone has a last minute thing, I guess we'll call it good until next month.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.